by Thomas. Thomas is a good friend of ours at Codif, and excited to get started working with him. And he has a lot of great insights about implementing AI and CX. He has an incredible CX background um, at Halo Caller, and previous to that at another great BPO, Customer HD. So yeah, a lot of people probably know who I am. I'm one of the co-founders in Codif. Previous to Codif, I had a venture capital background and worked with a lot of different startups and helped them get going and grow. And at Plug and Play, I worked with a lot of great startups since the early stages. Like we were early investors in like Plug and Play in like Dropbox and PayPal and Lending Club, and excited to see Codif grow now. So without further ado, Thomas, would love to hear maybe if you want to just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, so I'm Thomas Young. I've worked with Halo Collar for, 4 years now, two of those directly. Before that, they had no employees whatsoever. Everybody was a contractor or working for an outside source, such as myself. I've worked in several startups over the years. I've worked half my life in either CS or CX, and I'm not as young as I look. So it's been like 2 decades now almost. So it's been a really exciting adventure to be able to see things come and go, and AI being one of the ones that excite me the most because of the fact that like it just has so many applications. I won't steal Mike's thunder, and we'll get into some of those as we go forward. But yeah, it's been great. Like seeing this come up. Like I watched web chat really take off, and then become like everybody's got to go to web chat or self service, and now it's kind of coming back full circle and seeing that like people want to get back to that personalized touch and like feeling as though they're getting a tailored experience, which AI can not only help with but really help drive some of the most like effective means of doing that. So yeah, really really cool. I'm a big old nerd. I'm
Awesome.
sorry.
Yeah, no. It's all about hearing from you today. So go on all the rants you want. And yeah, like I'm super proud and excited. We met at an event, and kind of finally we're going live with you guys this week. So I know there's been very positive feedback from your side, and you've tested out a variety of platforms. So for us at Codif, this is very rewarding. So maybe I'll just start off. Like, I know I'm aware of this at Codif, but just for the audience, there's a lot of CX professionals listening in today. Like, what are some common requests at Halo Caller for CX, or maybe just share a little bit more about your operation at Halo Caller?
Yeah. Well, Mike, as you are well aware, and I did get clearance. I hope to finally add in a thing for it for Codif. But where's my order is like the biggest thing we get asked, or maybe not the biggest. It's just it's the forefront of my mind because I'm immediately like, that should have been solved in 30 seconds. Like, what's my order number? What's your address or email address? And boom, it's done. Which Codif will be able to help us do very shortly. But right now, it's all done manually, and it drives me crazy as a director of operations. Like, it's just so much wasted potential for my team to handle these low-hanging fruit. Where's my order? Plus, the customer may have to wait on them to get an answer. And like, or if they reach out outside of business hours, they've got to wait for an answer to come through. Whereas like in AI, that chatbot can just immediately be like, hey, here you go. Here's the information. Your order's processed, left our warehouse on this date. Here's the tracking information. Do you have any other questions? Do you want help setting it up, training, whatever? Like, you can go on from there. And so that's the biggest one is where's my order? That like true to my heart. Like, but we also get stuff like, how do I train my dog? Will it work on my dog? And strangely enough, we get a lot of questions about, and this is in our top 10 queries that we get is, will it work on my cat or horse, or pig? Elephant has also come up. It's just like, guys, I mean, maybe depending on the animal. Cat, too small. But we do have it working on a horse. Somebody had a blind horse that they used it on to help keep it, from running into the fence and hurting itself, which was really cool to me. They reached out and I was like, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'll give you one and you can try it. Like, I can't officially endorse it, but you go ahead, knock yourself out. There was also a capuchin monkey that was using it. So we got questions about how to track GPS using that. And then GPS settings, like how do I make sure that it's going to work in my location? Does it work at my house? All these things where like GPS basically works anywhere you are in the world, unless you're, subterranean or in a metal building. But so we get a lot of that too, which also is one of those things that, CODIF and the tests that we've done thus far. And I was just telling you before we got onto this, my COO was in a remote location on vacation, just supposed to be enjoying his time, but he responds to an email and he's like, "Oh my God, dude, this is effing awesome. CODIF, I've been able to just throw stuff at it at random. I've come up with all kinds of crazy stuff, and I have not been able to trip it up once." And I was like, yeah, that's why we went with them. Like, I've been telling you for a year, we need to use these guys. So that was really good. Made me look good, Mike. So thank you for that. But yeah, I think that kind of covers my rambling explanation of our top tier stuff. Where's my order, GPS thresholds, training my dog, and can I use it on X animal that makes no sense to try to use a dog collar on. But I'll leave out the ones that are like, can I use it on my kids or, whatever else. Like, we get those too. But I hope those are jokes.
That's awesome. And really appreciate the support and the hard work to get it going together. So I know you've been through several iterations. You've implemented several different AI solutions. You've been working for years with Zendesk. And what are some tips you have? Like, I know it's been a great start, and we're going to go live this week, which is really exciting. What are some things that you think have been effective for implementing CX and AI and customer support?
I'll say the ChatGPT coming to the scene really helps because of the fact that you've got those large language models that are able to understand intent more than what we had in the past, which was very procedural. Like, triggered on keywords, like you did your best effort to try to have something to get people in. So what I would say the best thing for a CX professional to do, like if you're looking into AI, whether it's for customer service, customer facing experience, or if you're looking to automate workflows, whatever, have a plan, have a roadmap. What is it you want to automate? Why does it make sense to automate it? Does it make sense to automate it? Will it negatively impact your customer experience or your agent experience if it's done correctly? But if it's done incorrectly, you guys are going to end up with a total mess on your hands. Take it from me. Like, we've tried to automate so many different things, but sometimes the technology just wasn't there yet, which now CODIF is. I'm so happy because people will ask the same question 1,000 different ways, and unless you can just really capture it, one of the examples that I used with Mike when we first met, when I was honestly kind of skeptical on what he was trying to pitch me on, was I had somebody ask, "How do I purchase Halo Collar?" But the keywords that were in there was, "How do I buy Halo Collar?" And instead, because of that one word being different, it totally threw off the bot and it couldn't answer the question. And that sent my CEO into a little bit of a spiral. But so it's those kinds of things where it just didn't understand the intent. Like, it just looked at keywords and tried to match it to the best it could. And then sometimes it just totally failed. But now we have a much better understanding and being able to leverage AI to understand all of our conversation drivers as well, rather than just, you have a few buttons you can click. So always come in it with a plan and be careful. So there are so many AI companies now that everybody is trying to do AI and just jump on that and get it going. But two things that I would caution. One, make sure that your CEO is not going out and dumping stuff into ChatGPT, because it is not secure. It is not closed source. So if they're putting customer data or proprietary data, it's not safe. Don't do it. That's a little bit of my IT background coming in, but just so everybody's aware, don't trust ChatGPT. It's great for conversation, but not safety. But then, find a good partner that can leverage AI to your need rather than trying to just go out and, because there's so many, and you've got to make sure that you find somebody reputable to work with, understand the limitations of their product, what it actually is, because everybody's slapping AI and generative AI on what they're doing because that's the cool new buzzwords. But in reality, some of these companies that, as Mike mentioned, I've been going through and talking with them, and their idea of generative AI is a spreadsheet that you just upload, and it uses that key set of phrases to try and match back to whatever article it is. And it couldn't even connect to our knowledge base to say, okay, what else? Like what answers are there? And so as a result, in the test that we did with them, like I was having to go in because we're a startup, so stuff changes on the daily, heck, sometimes on the hourly. So having to go to one more place and update was horrible. Most especially because of the fact that even when I updated it, I had to go through and wait for them to finish the upload. So it wasn't even just, I had to export the spreadsheet, add another line, re-import the spreadsheet. Awful. That is not generative AI. That's just more work for me. So just make sure you're intentional. You're looking at what it is you need to try and do, and make sure you come up with an effective plan and route to get there, and find suitable partners to do it. Make sure that they're willing to give you a trial or demo period, most especially a refundable one, just to make sure that they give you a chance to truly make sure it works, and it's not just they've taken a cookie cutter approach that will answer the questions you have at the forefront of your mind that you've told them you want answered, rather than being able to have your COO email you on the weekend and say, oh, I've thrown everything I can think of at this thing, and it still hasn't tripped up. Because theoretically, at this point, most of the information should be there. It should be able to find it. Yeah, just purpose and intent. Like, you have to have that. You can't just go check it out because it's a cool new thing.
Yeah. Thomas, that's a lot of great wisdom from your experience. And there's actually a question from the audience. So I'll start maybe, and then I'd love you to continue, because I think your words have more weight than myself, because you obviously are on the customer side, and you have worked with a variety of different platforms, not just one solution like what we built at Codif. But there's a question around generative AI, or is it conversational AI? And then why is that better than a regular chatbot, for example? So with us at Codif, yes, we're generative AI based. And so yes, as Thomas was mentioning, it will not just kind of like answer very specific questions, but it will actually understand the context of that language as well. So I don't know if there's something you want to share a little, or go a little bit deeper on, Thomas, maybe, because it sounds like some of the other chatbots you were using were very kind of like rule based. Like if it said, if it asks this, then you answer this. Whereas ours, I think, is a little bit more on the generative side, where it will actually understand the context and give you more detailed answers. So maybe, do you want to share a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So one of the things I was doing when I was testing with Codif was I wanted to make sure that the details mattered. So I kept an ongoing conversation about my specific breed of dog. So I have a German Shepherd, and so I was asking it, will it work for a German Shepherd? And they came back and gave me the correct information of like, here's how you would size it. Yes, based on the fact that the average breed size for a German Shepherd is 50 to 100 pounds, it'll work. And then I started to ask it more specific questions about training and whatnot. And so it would also tie back, even though I would say, after I first said German Shepherd, I then started just saying my dog. But it held on to the fact that I used the German Shepherd breed, and it would reiterate that in my answers that I was getting back and saying, hey, for your German Shepherd. So it kind of continued that conversation as if Mike and I were having a conversation, and he was selling me on the fact that it would work specifically for my dog, making it personal for me. So that was one of the biggest things. Is rather than just jumping to, yeah, it'll work for most breeds of dog, blah, blah, blah. And then the next question being totally generic based on, whatever rules were set in place by those keywords. So it's a much more, it understands much better, but it's also a much more personalized approach to it because of the fact that it is basically like having a conversation with a person. And so that's one of the things. And then the generative portion of it is super important to note because of the fact that it will continue to learn and understand better context from your customers based on historical data and the conversations it's having. And Mike, if I'm totally off the rails with that, you can stop me and tell me I'm dumb. But that's my understanding of it. It'll like continue to iterate and build its understanding of that context based on your product and your customer base. That's the biggest thing. It's like your customers are all individuals, but they can sometimes also start to coagulate into this hive mind, basically. So you can pull out those key indicators and understand the overall trends from your customers better than if they're just clicking the quick suggestion buttons and getting cookie cutter answers, because it may not necessarily answer their question. Your self-service rate will be lower, your satisfaction rate will be lower. And so that's one of the biggest things to me as the difference between generative and conversational or rule-based AIs.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary, Thomas. And I'll just ask the audience. I see there's a few questions. I think we answered a few of them, and people have hands raised. So if you have questions, just pop them in the chat. We'll go through them and give both of us a chance to answer. And maybe something we can also talk about, Thomas, are what are some things that work and don't work when using AI in CX, right? Because you've worked with a variety of startups, and some things I think were effective, some things were not effective, and maybe just for the CX professionals listening, if you could share some of those best practices, that'd be helpful for them.
Yeah, so like let me start with the doesn't work. So mostly because of the fact that that's a much shorter list. Like, I would say, it really comes down to your customer base, your, how you're approaching things. But realistically, like one of the biggest hurdles that you have to go overcome in AI is that people see that chatbot and they immediately think the horrible chatbots that are going to just send you in circles and not let you get to a human being. I get that feedback a lot, and then people actually use it, and then they like it. And we've had, and even our CEO was like that initially, and then ChatGPT came along, and then he became obsessed with the idea of this becoming a real thing for us. But overcoming the stigma of chat and the chat bot is the biggest problem that you'll run into, I think, with AI in general. Like, just, it's not going to be a terrible experience. So if you can overcome that, that'll help a lot. The other thing that doesn't work with AI is, like I said before, you have to make sure that you come at it with an actual planned approach rather than just saying, oh, this is a cool new thing, we got to put it into everything. Because us as a company, we plan to use AI for quite a lot on the back end in addition to CX. But CX is at the forefront of it. So it's the most mature portion of the AI business at the moment, really. And so there's a lot out there to be used. So really, just, I think AI will work in pretty much everything except for something that you need a person to handle. Like, if you have somebody, in our case, like if their dog is hurt, injured, lost, whatever, you probably want to go ahead and take care of that with a human being, just to make sure that, like, you CYA over, anything legally, troublesome. Like, you want to make sure that you bring that in and you handle it, and also make sure that that person knows that you care enough as a company to handle whatever it is, and you're not, putting them on a chatbot. Now, the longer list that I'll try to keep very short is AI. Honestly, if you can make sure that you do use that planned approach, can be leveraged in just about everything, at least to some extent, because automating those "where's my order," return requests, exchange requests. So, like, if you get the wrong size, and being able to leverage the AI to be able to go through and say, all right, you know what, I got this dress in a size 8, and I'm obviously not a size 8. So go in and immediately be able to do that, do the color change, whatever. That takes time off of your CS team to be able to handle the more white glove service type things that you want to have handled. But it allows the customer also to self-service and instantly get that gratification of, oh, cool, they're going to send me my replacement, and I'll put this in the mail, I'll drop it off at Kohl's, Amazon, wherever it is that you're using for reverse logistics, and be able to pretty much immediately handle that. That, like, I handle a lot of e-com things, so that's one of the biggest things to me, is reverse logistics actually being largely automated and working like it's supposed to one day when I grow up. But that's one of the biggest things that can save your money so much more effectively, because of the fact that, like, it just cuts down on so much wait time for the customer, increases satisfaction. You can turn a very, like, negative experience into a very positive story because you made it so seamless for them to go in and exchange that order, return it, whatever, and they'll become a brand advocate for you even if they're no longer a customer because of the fact that that experience was so much easier on them than when you dread having to call up Time Warner Cable, oh, sorry, aging myself, Spectrum, and saying, hey, this doesn't work, and going in circles forever, like being from personal experience. Sorry to name Spectrum outright, but going through all that, where you could have just gone in and said, hey, this is it, like have it send the signals to your modem, have it go through all the process that the agent would normally, or immediately detect that the modem's offline. Hey, you know what? The modem's offline. We got to send a truck to your house. So that saved an hour worth of hold time for your customer. So just in short, AI, amazing. Can be used for about anything, just as long as you do it with an actual like focused approach.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going through this kind of, I see it as like an AI revolution now, right? It's
Right.
like ChatGPT's out, everyone's testing it as a consumer. You said something that was really important is like, but how can we do this for your company in a safe and compliant manner, right? So I think that's one of the things where it's important to work with a company like us. And so maybe like you can share some other best practices as well. Like what are some things that work and don't work when using AI in CX, as some other recommendations for the audience?
Yeah. So again, you got to make sure you're compliant, right? So you can't. You need to make sure that whatever partner you work with, whether it's Coda for somebody else, is not leaking your customer data somewhere else, passing it through these LLMs and in an unsecured manner. And so then you're liable just as much as Codif is for that information getting out. So make sure that you're doing that. But you know, we also run into the fact of like PCI compliance. So you could theoretically have your bot fulfilling orders for people, but I would say that's probably a little bit of a dicey proposition at the moment, to where you don't maybe want to have a chatbot doing that. But just comes down to kind of making sure that, like, I'm at a loss, honestly, for what won't work for the most part. Outside of, you've got a ton of businesses out there that I won't say are unreputable, but don't have a fleshed out and mature approach to AI. They're like, oh yeah, we've been doing call center space for 30 years. Let's jump into AI because that's the thing that's happening right now, and they have no idea how to implement it. So that won't work for you because you're going to end up with it,
Mhm.
like on the surface looks great, but in reality, like it's just not executed with that purpose. And so, they've just taken whatever they built in the 1970s and crammed it into the idea of a chatbot or an AI automation, and so that's going to fail. Like you're going to pay way more money than you should trying to get this to work, and you're going to struggle with getting that going. So won't work in AI. I just have to reiterate, like approaching it without purpose. Like you just have to know what you're wanting to do and find somebody that knows how to do it. That's your biggest thing.
Definitely. And one thing I thought that was important you mentioned was around like security. And one thing since inception at Codif is we built it with SOC 2 type 2 compliance, and we met all these important kind of security metrics. And that came from our kind of CTO's background at Uber, where he realized like when you do it at a large scale like Uber, you have to make sure you kind of check all these boxes, and you match all these kind of important security and compliance requirements. And so that kind of leads me to the next question, Thomas. And I think those are things from our side that were important that we did. But what are some things from your side, like to successfully kind of, we're going through this implementation now, like what are some of the things that you've done to make this successful? And I mean, I love the excitement in your organization where your COO is on vacation in some remote island and he's testing the chatbot. But maybe if you could share like some things you've done as a CX leader to make this implementation successful as we go live this week.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge is, again, ChatGPT exists, so everybody's super excited and has these crazy ideas of what AI can and will do out of the box. So it's in the name, generative AI. So it's going to sometimes take time for it to really, evolve, understand. We had the luxury of a lot of historical data for Codif to digest, and I've done a great job with that. But it's, you have to iterate on the process. It's iterative. Like, you have to keep going. So setting that expectation out of the gate will be very big for your key stakeholders. Is just understand like truly how it works and how it's intended to work versus, ChatGPT has been running with all of the internet like for a long time. So there's few things that it won't answer. The hallucinations probably going to pop up, and that's one of the other things that you want to make sure that you're handling is like identifying those hallucinations. And for anybody that's not super familiar, like that's just when it doesn't know the answer and it makes it up. So making sure that you're handling those and you're QAing that bot, and make sure that you start off with your list of key like FAQs, get it out of the way, make sure that it can do that and ingest whatever data it can, and then once you get something that's malleable enough to be able to pass on to the rest of the team, let them get in. Make sure that they test it and they ask things differently, because like I said, every time somebody asks a question, that same question can be asked 1,000 different ways. So make sure that you can go in and ask it that 1,000 different ways. So that's one of the biggest things, is just make sure you set the expectations. You have a plan for what your KPIs are, or you have a plan to figure out what your KPIs are once you launch, in our case, Mike. But theoretically, you should know what your KPIs are before you launch and how you're going to measure that goal. And I see one from the audience with the how do we measure the efficiency of the AI implementation for customer service or customer experience? And definitely how you prove it out at the C-level. That's one of the biggest challenges too. And what I try to coach everybody on is know your audience and who you're talking to and how to speak their language. So the CFO is going to care way more about the cost savings that the AI is driving. And so that's one of the things that you'll look at. How many deflections are you getting? And then figure out your cost per contact and say, okay, you know what? We deflected 150,000 interactions this month, which is goal for us. But like how you deflect 150,000 and then those, cost you $7 per interaction on average if you were to have an agent handle it. My cost per interaction is way higher than that. So Mike, you've got a much higher goal to hit, but it's fine. But so then you can say, all right, here's the cost savings. This is what this, like the number of man hours that it handled, like this chat AI solved for us. This is the number of questions that were answered in X amount of time that would have taken, however long. And then you can also start looking at some of your conversion rate. So how's your conversion rate affected on your website? Because you now have this chat AI that's going in and helping with the pre-sales questions that can be handled 24/7, where you might not have 24/7 business hours for your support team. So that's one of the key things, like for your CFO. And then your, CXO may be you, or it may be somebody else, but they're going to care about how's the satisfaction on it? What's the engagement rate like? And so you have to be able to make sure that you're looking at those. Like Codif has a great dashboard, by the way, that'll tell you all these things that are going on and some of your key call drivers, so you can get out ahead of things that are coming up as questions that you may want to solve for on your website. And then that just gives you one more key piece for the marketing team, which goes into a whole different branch of people. But again, just knowing your audience, what they care about, what matters to them, and then kind of tailoring your message to each of them. Obviously, you'll have to give some updates to the entire board at the same time, but that's usually the way I go about it. It's just kind of, here's your little piece that you care about, because otherwise you're going to glaze over while I'm giving this presentation, like after the first 10 seconds. So here's the piece that matters to you, and here's the high level, and then we'll circle back and go into that in more detail and like just kind of give everybody their own piece to chew on and ask their questions about, because you'll go much further with them going that way, rather than just be like, hey, you know what? We could have an 80%, self-service rate, and then that would reduce, our overall like customer contact load by quite a large margin, whereas we currently have a 65%. And, that costs us way more money than it needs to. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. But if not, you can follow up and I can try to be more specific, or let Mike actually say something.
Hey man, no, the people love talking to you. We were did a presentation the other week at CCW with Nom Nom, another leading dog company, with their head of CX, and everyone always wants to hear from the CX professional, right? So yeah, love kind of all those kind of bits of information from your side and how it's working. So I'll ask kind of one last question, and if the audience has any questions, feel free to jump in. So where do you see the future of AI and CX? I think there's a lot of opportunities kind of going forward. And one thing that I'm really excited kind of to do with Halo Caller is also like, not just, I think we've done a great job on the CX side, but you guys have a lot of requests in terms of like pre-sales as well, right? And where I see it is like, you could, when you interact with a company and like, let's say there's a chatbot or you have a request, there's opportunities to even increase revenue or track that and kind of utilize like our chatbot, for example, for pre-sales, for converting additional revenue. So that's like an additional thing that I'm personally excited about. But Thomas, you've been in CX for many years and have a tremendous experience, and now
Thanks,
you're also a technology guy, right? So
yeah.
I think you're a great guy to ask. So where do you see the future of AI in CX?
So in short, I think AI is the future of CX largely. So you'll always have the human component that'll go in and be there for that white glove service, but being able to automate more and more of the lower ends, low hanging fruit, things that you can go and just instantly have an answer, because we do live in a instant gratification society now. So like, you want to be able to get your answer and you want it immediately. So that's one of the biggest things there. But I also see it far more from the customer facing side of things and evolving into business insights, because one of the key things that I'm super excited about with Codif is being able to go through and digest the last 5 years of data that I've got, that it would just take me forever to figure out why people are calling in and what the trends look like over the years, and being able to just use that LLM and say, all right, what are our key drivers? What are people asking? How are they asking it? And so I think that's one of the key things for AI too in the CX space, is just being able to understand your customers better, because that's one of the key things that we need as CX professionals, to engage with customers, to be able to understand exactly what they need. And sometimes the customer doesn't even know what they need themselves, so they might not even know how to ask what it is that they need to ask. And so we can kind of infer that from the data, and this just gives us one more thing that allows us to understand how that works and utilize it and leverage that data, because we have so much that we could use that's just there and largely inaccessible unless you spend countless hours scrolling through tickets, listening to phone calls, trying to find transcripts and things. So that's one of the other big pieces of AI in CX. But then there's also just the ability of like QA. And we are video first support. Like, we also have email, phone, but like video is where it's been for us, because we, like, people just have gotten back to where if they have a real problem, especially when it comes to their dogs, like, they are very sensitive. So getting on a phone call or a video call with an actual person and being able to talk through their concerns and like get that experience as if they're in store has been invaluable for us. So being able to leverage AI to understand what's happening in some of those conversations, and the agent co-pilot is the other thing, is just like, I'm super excited about with Codif, is like our agents being able to get answers at their fingertips is massive, because things do change a lot for us. So having it understand what's going on with the customer interaction and then say, hey, by the way, should you try this step? Tremendous. So just being able to interface into the agents and augmenting their experience, making it easier for them, is a whole other thing for AI that's just, again, the future of CX is just being able to make things better and more efficient, leveraging AI. Not necessarily replacing all your people, because that's not realistically ever going to be the case, I think, in our lifetimes, but being able to replace a lot of the mundane that agents don't necessarily enjoy and aren't passionate about, that can cause more burnout, with AI to be able to give them the opportunity to be able to invest more time and opportunity into the customer experience, and thus driving the agent experience, which kind of just continues to drive the customer experience. It just kind of becomes this feedback loop that generates more and more of a positive experience for both of them.
Yeah, that's amazing insight, Thomas, and love your kind of thought leadership in the CX space. So, yeah, today was a great webinar. I wanted to thank everyone for joining, and also Thomas, before we kind of close the webinar, is there any closing remark you'd like to share with everyone? And then, secondly, how can everyone contact you, or if they want to learn more, or just kind of
Right.
learn from your kind of knowledge of this in the
Yeah.
CX space?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, obviously. So I think Mike even tagged me in the post that this was from. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Mike and I will both will be at Gladly Connect. I hope. I think you're still going to Gladly. I'll
Yeah,
also be a
we'll be there.
speaker at CCW Las Vegas, so I'll be there as well. Maybe at some conferences sometime in the near future. I don't know. There's been a lot going on, so I've been trying to avoid going to too many. But yeah, like you can also reach out to me via email from LinkedIn. But yeah, so just reach out. I'm happy to help anybody that's got any questions. Always happy to make new connections. That's how Mike and I ended up working together in this capacity. We just happened to run into each other at one of these CMP events, and kind of went from there. And turned out it was a really good match from the start. But those are the biggest thing. Just again, like make sure that you're being intentional on whatever it is you're doing, because that'll drive quite a lot of success on your front. Even if it's a crazy ass idea, just be intentional and make sure you approach it the right way. And then you can have video first support, because I told him he was crazy when he decided he wanted to do that. I was like, it's going to cost way more money than what you currently pay for phone. I was wrong. Like, I'm eating crow, but it did take a lot of iteration to get there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Thomas, for your leadership, and thanks for your partnership, and your time today. So, thanks, everyone. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
The webinar has ended. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.